All right, all right, so sometimes you are raised by a man and you can see the ways in which he influenced you, you can see the traits that you share with him. And then sometimes you have a father and you're like, I don't know what happened here, and I don't understand what the fuck is going on with my life. So, hold on to those warm feelies. We're about to go there. You are about to be introduced to the most genuine dick you've ever heard of in your entire life. Are you ready? All right. Rebecca Sinner is going to tell you about it.
Okay. I hope you're all ready for this. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
I thought my father bizarre even as a child. My father, Richard, also known as Dick, ran around the house drunk, shouting and swatting at anyone who got in his way. He spoke to me and my brother through our stepmother, even if we were sitting within swatting distance. I spent a lot of my child trying to decode him through watching and snooping. I had to snoop. I had to snoop because nothing was discussed at our house, ever. So we moved every year from country to country, and my father was this consultant, and we flew first class, and it was amazing. But my brother and I never knew it was time to move until the Packers showed up. And that's when we get the clue, like, it's time to go. We're skipping this place and going to someplace else. So my father always dressed well, and his shoe collection rivaled Imelda Marcos's. And what he loved most was tailored clothing and the attention that he received as a sharp-dressed man. My father's self-confidence filled a room without a question, and women absolutely loved him. They flocked to him. So when I discovered at the age of 14 large garish lingerie in his dresser, I suspected that this ladies' man was also a man who liked to wear lady things. I didn't really know about cross-dressing because I was 14 and living in Arkansas. And although we had moved around the world and we had lived in places like Rio and London, and I had seen a lot of really interesting things, I was still really sheltered, and I didn't really understand why he had large lingerie that was obviously his, because my stepmother was very petite and very stylish. And it was an interesting twist that gave a third dimension to someone who I thought was just a total asshole alcoholic all the time, shouting and screaming at us at any provocation. My snooping also led to another discovery. Once while I was digging through a few drawers in the living room, my best friend Amber and I found a VHS tape entitled Fat Chicks in Bed. I was not surprised that he watched porn. The TV had been left on that channel many times before. But this tape was hilarious because of the title and confusing because my father was an absolute fattest. My biological mother had become very heavy later in life, and he never really failed to comment on his distaste for fat women. He would frequently instruct me to not get fat like my mother, and went so far as to keep a scale by the dining room table. He liked to insist on everyone weighing in before meals. His goal was to weigh less than his youngest son, who was 40 years his junior. My little brother's 6'4" and weighs about 155 pounds. So I flatly refused to participate in being weighed like livestock. So Fat Chicks in Bed seemed like an odd choice to me. He abused food, almost as worse, almost as bad as he abused people. He boiled meat. He exclusively cooked with margarine. And his worst offense in the kitchen was this obscene bag of forever spaghetti that he kept in the freezer. When it was spaghetti night, he would take out the frozen bag and dump its contents into a pot, and then add new sauce and about a half a bottle of red wine to the old sauce, and then after dinner, he would put the leftovers back into the same bag, return it to the freezer, thus extending the life of the original sauce forever into eternity. Forever spaghetti. My little brother was 15 when he found me at a friend's apartment. He was clearly flustered and demanding to speak to me privately. I was a college kid smoking my stress away and not really interested in his sense of panic and urgency. And my friends, they smelled a little bit of tragedy and they circled in and encouraged him to share his distress. My brother said he'd gone home early to get some soccer gear and Dad was wearing eyeliner. I said, Keith Richards wears eyeliner. My brother said, and a dress. And I said, what kind of dress? Like a kimono? And he said, no, not like a kimono. Then he threw out his coup de grace and wedged heels. We absorbed the details. My brother, completely empty, dropped down to the couch, and everyone started talking at once. Hey, dude, it's cool. Don't think too much about it. Keith Richards does wear eyeliner. Mick Jagger probably does too. I said cheerfully, hey, at least he was dressed, because once, when Sarah and I walked into the house in the middle of a Saturday afternoon, he was completely naked, laid out on the couch reading the newspaper. It didn't flinch when we walked in, just folded down the corner and scowled at us. So, it could have been worse. Then when he was 65, he managed to upstage Jesus Christ himself at Easter dinner by standing drunkenly before the family and announcing, I'm a woman now. He then disappeared down the hallway, returning with a large, hideous dress that he offered to me. Here, you can have this. I bought it for me, but it's too big. He now wanted to be called Christine, and Christine had already mastered the feminine art of the backhanded compliment. For a minute I thought this would make him better, or her better. And even though he had the surgeries done in Thailand without the counseling required in the United States, and even though my stepmother seemed to know nothing about it, and even though he was still suggesting that I was fat, I hoped that becoming a woman would make him happy. Maybe he'd quit drinking. He and my stepmother divorced 2 years later. Surprise sexual reassignment can really take its toll on a marriage. I presume I wouldn't know because we discussed nothing. Not his C-cups, not his jaw shaving, not the fact that he may not, nothing. So, we didn't see much of him after that. He didn't tell us where he lived, and he showed as much interest in us, and all of us, as he always had, which would be about, none. He showed none. And just as we had his children, we speculated and wondered and remained thoroughly intrigued by the man who'd fathered us. And when I last spoke to him on the phone, it was to inform him that my biological mother had passed away. It wasn't that I expected him to care, but she died without resources and I needed about $1,000 to help with the cremation. He rudely denied my request and told me that it was irresponsible to die poor. I said, fine, I'll just call your mother. Because I knew my grandmother wouldn't deny me. And even though she was the mother of this heartless asshole alcoholic, she was a doting grandmother who loves me very much and she would never have refused me. So he promptly wired that money to me. He returned the favor a few years later when I came home from work one day to find a very agitated Christine in my yard demanding money from me for the shitty investment that he had made in my childhood. My upbringing apparently had cost a lot more than he expected, and the outcome was not what he wanted. I had been scared of him all of my life, but he was especially terrifying now. She had recently been arrested on multiple felony charges, including possessing 22 grams of methamphetamine, possession of an unregistered firearm, and a battery charge for hitting his new bride, a stepmother I had yet to meet, with his cell phone. I'd seen his mugshot, and I knew that he had made a post-retirement foray into the, venture of meth dealership, which is impressive for a 69-year-old. Because, better late than never to make that quick money. I have to tell you, though, I've never been any more terrified, because there's nothing more frightening than a 6'2" meth head with tits in wedge heels. I shared these episodes with my brother in hopes that we could make sense of it together. My dad remained this crazy, unknowable fountain of weirdness that he'd always been. It's just that now he had a vagina and a meth habit. That meth habit, though, was a little bit overwhelming beyond the rest of it. That is until about, 13 days ago, because on Monday, June 13th, literally, I'm not kidding, 13 days ago, a detective from the Fayetteville Police Department called to tell me that he needed to talk to me about my father. I panicked. Had he murdered someone? Had someone murdered him? Did I have anything illegal in the house? Did the detective suspect that I had my own meth empire? The hour it took this detective to get to my house was excruciating. But when he arrived, he told me my 76-year-old father, a man, according to his 3-month-old driver's license, had been found dead in his bed. His neighbors in the apartment complex heard his dog barking in a peculiar fashion, and for an extended period of time, this worried them, and they decided to go ahead and call management. He'd been there for a few days, the apparent victim of natural causes. The detective said he had found me through my dad's lawyer, who was listed as his next of kin. Not me, not my little brother, not my 2 older siblings that Dad had disowned decades earlier for being meth heads. His lawyer was his next of kin. And the detective told me that I needed to go over to my dad's apartment to see what I could do to finalize his affairs. The next morning, I went to the apartment and met the manager, who was very busy consoling my ex-stepmother, Michelle, who I'd never met. She had just dropped by to visit my father and seemed genuinely devastated. She had been denied entry to his apartment because, you see, she wasn't his wife anymore. I was also denied entry for the time being because a hazmat team was waiting to remove some very disgusting items. So I agreed to come back later and hesitantly gave Michelle my phone number. I began receiving text messages from her immediately. She had no rights as they were divorced, so she had to go through me, and there were keepsakes in the apartment that she just had to have. I ignored her in favor of preparing myself to enter the apartment that afternoon. My little brother had yet to arrive, so I took my best friend Amber along. She's always proved loyal and strong throughout of our crazy discoveries, and I knew she wouldn't let me down. So the manager explained to us that Dad was in the process of being evicted for not taking his dog out. Ever. The dog, a Shih Tzu, had already been taken away once. And when they took it away, it was brown. And when he talked them into bringing it back, the dog was white. So he'd also not paid his rent for June. And they really wanted his stuff out as fast as possible. I had already suspected that the mystery that was behind Christine was not something I really wanted to unravel. But we were already there, and Amber was at my side, and the keys were in my hot hand, so we decided to go for it. The smell hit us before the door was completely opened. Not only had the dog never been taken out, but her droppings had never been picked up off the floor. It looked like that it had rained tiny dog turds on every inch of the apartment. We walked in, the turds crunching beneath our feet. After running back in horror, we were given masks and gloves to aid us in our expedition. A cursory walk around the apartment taught us a few tantalizing details immediately. He had picked up smoking Newports. I suppose that helps legitimize his image as a drug dealer. And he had developed a weird fascination with Betty Boop in his later years. He had a vast collection of figurines that he kept in a beautifully cleaned curio cabinet in the living room. He had stopped keeping his Forever spaghetti in the freezer in favor of Jimmy Dean microwavable biscuits. And he had some glamour shots of himself in several frames around the house. 4 of them. I can't show them to you because my traitor-ass brother threw them in the trash can behind my back. He knew I wanted them for this show. But he's not down with sharing like this. He'd rather we just don't talk about it, like, every other aspect. But anyway, we also found some unregistered guns that we assumed that, he had used because, meth addicts and dealers are required to be armed. And he did have photos of his mother and some of his aunt's arts on the wall, but there was not one photo of myself or any of my other 3 siblings. There were some shoes, a lot of shoes, fancy shoes with shiny gold tips and lots of silver and bling. Amber and I ran away screaming. We did return that evening with my brother, who had flown in to assist me. But at this point, there was a small crowd of crackhead vultures waiting for us when we came back, because my ex-stepmother, who invited them, told us that they had all been very close to my father, and they were very bereaved. And I kind of thought, I've never met any of these people before. I don't know. But it turns out they were there to scavenge whatever they could sell. Their names were Manda, a youngish meth head with very, very kind eyes, like light blue and very sweet. And Big D, a very large black man who told us that he had really taken care of Mr. Richard. And my brother told them all very firmly that they'd have to wait until we had gone through the house before they could scavenge. They cried and moaned and smoked cigarettes while they loaded their vehicles to maximum capacity. Just think about anything you could possibly take to a pawn shop. As in life, Christine remains a gross mystery in death. Jason, my little brother, despite my warning, had dug deeper and looked harder than Amber and I had during our first visit because we had been trying to find some very special items that would help with his, process of death, like documents for the VA, etc. And, he was rewarded accordingly for digging a little deeper. He told me on the way home from the terrible apartment that he had found some of Dad's pension papers in a brown bag in the shoe closet. I'd not seen this bag and congratulated him, as we needed to send a copy of the death certificate to these people, and good job. But he waved me off, and he wasn't taking my compliment, and he wasn't interested in my praise. He said there'd been another bag. A black bag. I was like, what's in it? What'd you find? He said that black bag was full of dicks. He said it was a black bag of dicks. I asked how many dicks make up a bag of dicks. Because I was genuinely curious. And he said more than 6, but less than 12. So now you know too. But he said that wasn't the worst of it. No. There was a zipper pocket in that black bag. And bless his heart, he had to open it because he was really looking for some very specific items. And in that last zipper pocket that he courageously opened, he found another dick, which we surmised must have been a very special dick, because this dick had its own pocket. It's not the kind of dick you keep with all your regular dicks. But honestly, ladies and gentlemen, that's not the end, because we had yet to read the last will and testament. Asshole. To each of his 4 children, my father left $1. $1. Despite management's claim, as well as those closest to the Shih Tzu, those crackhead vultures, the Shih Tzu's formal name was Muffin. And apparently they all called her Boo Boo because that was her street name. Perhaps she was the one smoking the Newports, I don't know. And although he could not be bothered to include his eldest daughter's middle name in his will, he dedicated an entire fucking paragraph to Muffin, aka Boo Boo. Boo Boo was to be given $10,000. The care and keeping of Boo Boo, aka Muffin, who he clearly cherished as evidence of keeping her scat all around him on the apartment floor. I assume that he had been a little bit more flush with cash when he authored this will in 2007, because at the time of his death he had $409 in his wallet and $11.66 in his bank account. Muffin's not gonna get her $10,000. But I got my dollar. And that's all I know so far. Clearly it's all a little fresh, and I thought that I had daddy issues before, but the first story I prepared for this show prior to his death reads like a nursery rhyme after I entered that apartment. When I told Amber that Jason had found a bag of dicks in the apartment, her immediate response was, "Were they human?" That's what raised me. But mercifully, he didn't raise me. My brother and I raised each other, and we did a damn good job given our circumstances. And I really, really am sad that he died alone in those conditions, truly. And I'm sad that that dog lived its life in an apartment, and I hope it's happier with my new ex-stepmother, Michelle. But mostly I'm grateful for the family that I have carefully created from true friendship and the unconditional love of my brothers, my grandparents, and my step-parents.